Hey guys, Samu7 here, and today, I think I'm gonna have two videos coming out for quite a while now, maybe for like 2 weeks or so. I'm gonna try to do 2 videos a day because of the fact that, if you're wondering where I've been this month, I've not been uploading much, but I've been recording an absolutely ridiculous amount. I've been playing a lot, I've been recording a ton, and I just have a ridiculous amount of COD footage and Fortnite footage backed up, and I'm probably gonna have to start streaming it now soon as well, because it's just like it's starting to get almost overwhelming with how many good gameplays on Fortnite and COD that I have stocked up. So hopefully I can keep this, you know, two video a day thing going for quite a while. But for this video, I wanted to talk about my my thoughts on The Last Jedi. I just saw it yesterday, and overall I think it was pretty good. This has one of the most, it's probably the most divisive Star Wars movie that I've ever seen, which is weird to say, but like, it's either, it's not like the prequels where like clearly the majority of people don't like most of the prequel movies, and then original trilogy, clearly majority of people like each of those movies. This one is so divisive, it almost feels like 50-50 on whether you liked or didn't like it. And there's honestly not that many people like in the middle on it. There's not too many, like it's a lot of, I see a lot of extreme opinions on this movie, and I know that doesn't represent, you know, the majority. I know it doesn't. I know that's just a very vocal minorities on each side, whether you're like super for it or super not for it. I know that's true, but it's still weird to see how divided people are over the movie. It's honestly crazy. The first thing I'm gonna say though is, if you're one of the people that's saying that this is worse than the prequels, you're just straight up wrong. Like, like it is not. I can trust me. While watching this, there are several points in the movie where I'm like, okay, I can see why people don't like this moment. I can see why people don't like the movie. I still enjoyed it, but I totally get where a lot of the people that don't like it are coming from. But if you're going as far as to say that this is worse than Attack of the Clones, that this is worse than I hate sand, it's so coarse and rough, you're dumb. Like, you're literally dumb. You either have nostalgia goggles, you're either not thinking, or you just have no taste in movies. Like, I can totally understand disliking this movie, just not for that reasoning. It's just, ugh, it's so much better than any of the prequel movies. So I don't see where people are coming from there. What I wanted to talk about in this video are the things that I think are dividing people on whether they like it or not. So I'm going to go over quite a few things in this. I'm probably going to do this over a Fortnite gameplay, so like about a 20-minute long video. I'll probably release several videos talking about The Last Jedi, because honestly I could talk about this movie for like 3 hours, and that's the main reason why I like it. There's a lot of things to talk about with this movie. It's absolutely loaded. So first thing I noticed that I know is going to divide people. The whole space Leia thing. You're gonna have this is a thing where you're not really gonna have a middle ground. Like, people are either gonna love this moment or they're not gonna care for it. So and this is spoilers, by the way. I probably should have already mentioned that. Maybe I'll put it in the title, but this is all spoiler talk. So that's the first moment that I think is gonna divide people, because it's just so. I liked it, and even I'll admit that it was pretty cheesy. Like, it was just so, like, it's a moment that's just out of left field. The reason why I liked it is because personally, and I think these are mostly the people that are like me in this case are going to be the people that liked it. I always thought Leia had like force powers, and I was always waiting to see them. So the fact that this movie actually gave them to her was really cool in my opinion. I thought it was about time to see them, and the way they did it, as almost the way I've seen people describe it, and I like this description. They used it as almost like an adrenaline rush type thing. Like, she, you know, she's never been in a situation of like literally she's gonna die right there like that. So it's kind of like an adrenaline rush of the Force in a way, where it just comes out of nowhere and saves her. I thought that was pretty cool. So personally, I like that moment, but I can see why people don't. I can see why people preferred Leia as not having the Force, even though, you know, as soon as she wakes up, she goes right back to not being a Force user. But I can see why people don't like the moment. They probably just like Leia as a normal character. They also probably don't like it for the fact that, even I'll admit, it's just a little cheesy. Like, it's a very cheesy moment. But I mean, hell, we're talking. This is the movie series with the freaking Ewoks taking down the Empire, man. Like, come on. Anyways, so that's the first moment that I think is really going to divide people. Um, Another one is another huge one that just sticks out in my mind. Oh, God, there's two here. I'm going to go over Luke first. So, the way Luke's character is treated in this movie is definitely going to divide a lot of the fan base because they take a more, I would say, they take a more realistic approach with them. And that's the reason why I like, and I don't want to say I like everything that they did in this movie. So I'll get to some of the things that were divisive that I didn't like later on. I'm just going over the ones that I did approve of right now. So what they do with Luke's character in this movie is they essentially, the way I see it, they take him more realistically. Um, Instead of him being just a legend, like basically instead of him being what your mind builds him up to be like, they take a more realistic approach. What I'm trying to say here is most fans uh, probably envisioned Luke being like this grizzled veteran, almost like a Yoda type character where he's super experienced and he can do no wrong and he's an insane Jedi master and he's just like completely got his life figured out with his old age, and they basically just poop on that, and which I liked because it makes sense that he wouldn't be like that, you know? Especially with the thing that they set up in The Force Awakens with him failing to train the Jedis. It makes absolute sense that Luke would not be in a very good mental state. That he would be more of a broken man. I think a lot of people just don't expect it because how a lot of people remember Luke recently is him at the end of Return of the Jedi. So they expect him to still be like that. But you also got to remember it's been freaking 30 years, man. Like this character's gone, he's gone through some stuff. Like there's plenty of off-screen experiences and events that he's gone through that we haven't seen. So in reality, people building him up, I think people ruined Luke with their own expectations. I think that they built up this vision of him in their mind, and when the movie pooped on it, they just didn't know how to react to it, which I kind of liked because that happens a lot in real life. That happens a lot with people that meet celebrities. They don't end up being exactly how they envision them. They get this perfect idea of the person in their mind, and then they meet him, and they're not really that perfect. This happens a lot with role models. Maybe when you're a kid, there's this person you really look up to, and when you grow up, they are not the same person. Like you see them in a completely different light. This happens with people's parents a lot. This can happen with just role models like teachers, stuff like that. Maybe even friends. But yeah, this happen. What I'm getting at is the thing with Luke. This happens a lot in real life. This happens to everybody, essentially. I think it's something that everybody can relate to. So I actually really liked it. I liked that they took a more realistic approach with this character, and I liked how he was really, Christmas season, he was kind of like a Scrooge. You know, he was just pissy and whiny, which is true to Luke's character, I would say. And his disconnect from the Force. I thought it was a really interesting take on his character, and I thought that's my main takeaway from it. It was interesting. If they would have went the route that people expected them to go, I think it would have been really boring. It would have been exactly what we expected, and it just would have been boring. But the fact that they actually came up with something to surprise us that actually makes sense, I think was definitely the better way to go. Okay, so speaking of big, events with characters that you don't expect, I gotta go to Snoke next. So Snoke is low-key one of my favorite parts of this movie. Honestly, he's only in it for the first. It's hard for me to tell the time frame because I was really tired when I saw this movie. I was going on like 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So when I saw the film, I was my time when I don't get enough sleep, my inner clock is off. For example, I just gotta say this tangent quick. There was this experiment in my psychology class where everybody laid their heads down and they counted to 60, and then the teacher would stop somewhere later. After a minute and a half or so to see how close people were with their predictions of what was a minute. And I was going on about 40 seconds, and remember, this is a day similar to the day I saw Star Wars. I was really tired. I was 4 hours of sleep, freaking school day. So I was going on counting. I was around 40 seconds I had counted, is the way I remember it. And the teacher told us to bring our heads up, and he's like, all right, I had to stop you guys. It's been a minute and a half. So my telling of time is really off. So I don't know when Snoke dies in the movie. I have no idea. I'm guessing it's an hour and a half in, but when I saw the Yoda scene, I was like, wow, there's a lot happening in this movie. We're only 30 minutes in, and I'm pretty sure that Yoda scene was over an hour at that point, so into the movie, so just completely off. But anyways, back on topic. Um, so Snoke is another. This is the one where I can really understand where people don't like what they did with Snoke. Personally, I like what they did with Snoke, but I'm not like the Luke and Leia thing. I'm 100% on board with. The Snoke one, I'm more like 75% on board with, I guess you could say. And the reason for that is that I actually really like the decision from a story standpoint and from a character standpoint to kill him off, because if you leave Snoke alive in this movie, then the third movie is most likely going to end up playing out exactly how the previous trilogy played out, and that's going to be boring. You know, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be recycled. It's not going to be new. It's going to be boring. So they did something that really caught me off guard, and I especially loved it after I saw the movie and thought about it. I'm like, that's really cool that they did that. They kill off Snoke in this movie, which is insane. I wasn't expecting that, and that's why I like it. It's one of those things that just comes out of left field, and like you just don't see that. You just don't see that coming. And I think it was a good decision moving forward. And I saw this in one of Ryan Johnson's interviews, and I think he completely gets it. Is because if you don't kill off Snoke in this movie, then the third movie, most likely, especially with JJ at the helm, now directing it, it's going to play out exactly how, or very, very similar to how Return of the Jedi played out. And again, like I said, that's just going to be boring. It's going to be the same old stuff recycled with different characters, just not as much fun. Instead, they make the decision to kill off Snoke in this movie, which is huge for Kylo's character, because the way, and again, this took, like, I wasn't able to think of this as I was watching it. It took the time after for me to think of this, but this basically takes Kylo's character and kind of ascends him over Darth Vader in a way, because that's one thing, you know, he always looks up to Vader. That's one thing that Vader couldn't do, or he always aspired to do, was take over the Emperor, but he never did it. This puts Kylo's character almost above Vader now, with killing Snoke. Like, that's a ballsy move to take that power from himself. That's nothing. That's something Vader could never do, and now he's done it in the second movie. Like, jeez, dude, that's a really good move for his character. That just strengthens his character even more. And Kylo is amazing in this movie, by the way. But that's not the topic of this video. I'll have to talk about him in another video, because after Force Awakens, I was like, wow, Rey is an awesome character. After this movie, I'm like, dude, that Kylo guy's pretty freaking sick too. But anyways, I can see why the Snoke thing divided people, because they didn't give any, you know, it's more of the Force Awakens fault than this movie's. That's why I wasn't mad at the Snoke thing. That's why I was on board with it, because I think the Snoke thing, a lot of things in this movie are Ryan trying to fix issues of the Force Awakens. So like a lot of things that people see as bad as with this movie, I'm like, it's not really bad with this movie. It's more of an issue of the Force Awakens that Ryan's trying to roll with and fix up, you know? Because with the Force Awakens, they build up this Snoke character as being really mysterious, and being really powerful. In this movie, they even build him up as being even more powerful. And it's this question, kind of similar to the Rey's parentage thing. It's like, who is Snoke? Where does he come from? How did he rise to power? And they never go into any of that. Turns out, didn't really matter. It was all about Kylo the whole time. So it didn't really matter who Snoke was. He was just there to bring Kylo and Rey together, and then to die. Like, that's all he was used for. So the reason why I said I'm 75% with Snoke's with the decision of killing Snoke is because I like the decision to kill him, and I like the decision to make him really powerful in the movie. He's one of the best parts of the movie, in my opinion. His power with the Force, really cool. I don't agree with the decision to not really give him any backstory at all, or any hint into. I mean, we don't even need his character's backstory. It could just be that he's like a new character. He's not connected. You know, everybody had these theories on who he was from the old movies. It could just be he's a completely new character, and that's fine. That's better in my opinion. Kind of like what they did with Rey, which I'm going to get to after this. But I still wish they would have at least gave us some lore on how he came to power, at least, you know? I feel like we could have, I feel like we're deserved that info, to be honest, because now I feel like the second movie is going to have to give us some info on how we got to the sequel trilogy, because the biggest issue with the sequel trilogy, in my opinion, is that the sequel trilogy has amazing characters and amazing moments and really good stories. Like the sequel trilogy is really good so far, in my opinion. But there's a huge gap between the sequel trilogy and the original trilogy, and we're never told how we get to the sequel trilogy. We're never told anything about the startup of the First Order. We're never told anything about that. Whereas like in a New Hope, prequels weren't even a thing at the time. But in A New Hope, there's like a lot of lore stuff in how the galaxy got to where it is today. And again, this is another issue that's not just an issue with The Last Jedi, it's a big issue with The Force Awakens as well, because The Force Awakens also didn't do anything about this, and The Force Awakens should have been the movie to do something about this. So this is another thing where I'm like, this isn't really a Last Jedi fault, this is more of a Force Awakens thing. Like, there hasn't been, we're 2 movies in, we're almost to the end. We're going to the 3rd movie, and there hasn't been like any lore at all on the connection or how we got here. And that's a huge issue. That is the biggest issue, not just of the movies, but more so the Force Awakens. But that is the biggest issue of the sequel trilogy, in my opinion. And that is why I said I was like 75% on killing Snoke, because it's like I like that they killed him. That decision was good, but there should have been like one extra scene with him. Maybe him with Hux, or maybe him by himself, just talking to himself, having a villain monologue. I don't know. There should have been one extra scene with him about his rise to power. And that's all you really need. You don't even need more than that. Like that one scene with Luke and Obi-Wan talking about the prequel trilogy, essentially, in A New Hope. It's just one scene, and that's all you needed. It was a great scene. It's just like 5 minutes long, I think, and that's all you needed. So I think this movie could have benefited from taking away from that Finn and Rose storyline and adding some more time to Luke and Rey and adding some more time to Snoke as well, because they were way better than that Finn and Rose storyline. Everything to do with Snoke, Rey, Luke, and Kylo, way better than that side plot. I like the Poe storyline though, but anyways, so I talked about Snoke for a while there, but justifiably, I mean that's a pretty big deal. So Snoke's the other. Deciding to kill him, that's the other thing that I think would divide people. Personally, I like this character. I like the decision to kill him. I don't like how much we got of him. I think he was underutilized. And I think if we got 1, maybe 2 more scenes with Snoke, he could have been my favorite part of the movie. Even with dying, I still think he would have just been my favorite character, possibly, but it just wasn't enough there. So moving on to the next thing that I think is going to divide people. So Rey's parentage, and this is another thing. This whole video really has been things that I think, except for the Leia thing, this whole video has, for the most part, been issues with The Force Awakens and not The Last Jedi that I think people are confusing with as an issue of The Last Jedi. Rey's parentage. Made is a huge deal after The Force Awakens. Like, this is a big topic of internet discussion pretty much all the way to the time where this movie's released. Is, who's her parents, what's her lineage, she's got to be connected to one of these characters. And that's the issue, that's the Force Awakens issue, because the Force Awakens builds her up with that one flashback scene where she goes back to Empire. That scene builds her up as having important parentage really hard. The fact that Luke's lightsaber calls her, there's so many hints for her being either a descendant of Luke or Obi-Wan, or even other characters. People have come up with theories that people were they had the twin theory that her and Kylo are twins, and there's hints for that. Like, there's hints for all these different types of parentage, parentage in Force Awakens. And then this movie, it turns out, and I think it was revealed really well, by the way. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie is how they decided to reveal it, with that scene with multiple of her, and she's supposed to see her parents, and then she ends up seeing herself. Awesome. That was really good. But anyways, it's an issue with The Force Awakens. In that movie, they build it up to be this huge deal, when in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't. I don't see that as an issue with this movie. I think, again, this is this movie trying to move her character forward, where The Force Awakens is focusing on things that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there's still a chance that they could go back on it. There's still a chance that in the next movie they could decide to reveal that Kylo was lying, that maybe that Rey didn't even know the truth at that point because she's the one that says it, that Kylo was manipulating her, which it does look like he's doing. Personally, I hope that they stick with her parents being nobodies. Personally, I think that's the stronger story, and it fits the theme of this movie, and it ruins one of the best themes in this movie if they go back on it in the next one. So I really, really hope that they don't do that. But anyways, I can see why Rey's parentage just divided people though, because again, this was just a huge part of the Force Awakens, and then it turns out to not be anything. It's like I can see why people were frustrated with that. They spent all that time speculating on the theories, and then it turns out she's no one. I can see why people are pissed. Even I spent time speculating on those theories, but personally, I'm happy with it because with the rest of the movie, it's a stronger story to have her. Plus, also, some people are like, "Oh, this can't happen. It's always got to be a descendant. You have to be born with parents strong in the Force to be strong in the Force." That's been debunked millions of times. I mean, freaking Phantom Menace, dude. Anakin has he doesn't even have a father, right? So he's like the strongest, one of the strongest Force users at that point. He's the chosen one, and he comes out of nowhere, which is kind of connects Rey's story with his. So I have absolutely no issue with it. Personally, I think it's a stronger story to have her be descended from no one, as they say, because. Well, one, she says it in I think it's like the first line she has. It's one of the first lines she has. It's a trailer line in The Force Awakens where she's like, "I'm no one." So I think it fits. And then when it comes to just story-wise, it's good for moving on, right? Because a lot of these movies, a lot of the themes of this movie's one of its biggest themes is just moving on, letting the past behind. So having Rey be something completely new, I think fits with that theme. It's she's new, she's not bound to some form of destiny by her past. She can form her own destiny, which makes her a stronger character. It makes for a stronger story. So personally, I'm on board with that one. But at the same time, again, I can totally see why people are frustrated with that. I get it. Again, if you hate the movie for one of like the reasons I mentioned in this video, totally understand it. Because stuff like that's going to divide people, and they take a lot of risks in this movie that are going to divide people. But anyways, I got to be getting close to my gameplay footage, the end of it here. So I might do a video. There's more divisive stuff in this movie. I might do a video talking about more of it. Again, I'm probably going to do a few videos talking about this movie because my favorite part of it is more so than The Force Awakens. I like this movie more the more I think about it, which is a rare thing, but there's just so much to talk about. There's so much packed in, and I think that there's a lot of things in this movie that you don't get when you see it. You don't understand it until afterwards, and that's why people have this knee-jerk reaction of negativity right after, whereas I even did. I wasn't sure if I liked it. When I was asked, did you like it, I was like, I don't know. I don't really know. I got to think about it. And that was I found out that was mainly because of the end scene. I wasn't a big fan of the end scene. I didn't really like the ending of The Force Awakens either. I think this trilogy's been kind of weak on endings. But I mean, heck, Empire was like that too. Like when Empire ended, I was like, dude, I don't know if I like that. But after a while, I found to like the ending, and I found to also realize that I was like, am I really gonna let the ending ruin that for me? I literally enjoyed pretty much everything before the ending. Am I really gonna say I didn't like the movie? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, like I literally had a great time throughout the whole thing, so I really enjoyed it. I think what happens though is the ending of the movie is really weird, and I can see why that off-puts people. Like they're like, I don't know if I enjoyed the whole thing now. Whereas, I had that knee-jerk reaction, then I thought about it, and I'm like, nah, it was just an average ending. Like the whole movie though was good. It still stands on its own. But anyways, like I said, could talk about this for frickin' plenty of time, and I'm sure I will. I'll make more videos on it. But this video here has to end. See you guys next time.